The pounding on my door started at exactly 7 on a Saturday morning. When I opened it, 3 men in identical yellow shirts stood on my porch, positioned just close enough to block my way out. They flashed plastic badges, held a clipboard, and delivered a threat. "Show your ID now," or they said they were authorized to detain me right there on my own front step until the sheriff showed up. The catch was simple. I didn't live in their neighborhood. My house sat on a county road, outside their gates and their authority. But Karen Black, the HOA president with a taste for control, didn't care about lines on a map. She saw a quiet guy who wanted peace and figured I'd fold. What she didn't know was that while she was sending her little intimidation squad, I was quietly building a file I called the Karen Chronicles. I wasn't just refusing to comply. I was documenting a financial mess tied to a backroom developer deal she was desperate to bury. This is how her fake 911 call boxed her into a lie, how her kickbacks ended up exposed to the county commission, and why she now drives past my still rusty mailbox every day from the apartment she had to move into. The first knock was almost polite, at least for a weekend morning. It was the kind that tries to sound friendly while still holding a clipboard full of attitude. I rolled over and shoved a pillow over my head. My wife Nancy jabbed me in the ribs. "Stan, someone's at the door." I muttered something along the lines of letting the cat handle it. The second knock dropped the act. 3 hard thumps that rattled the old glass in the door. I sighed, the sound of a man whose only goal in life was 10 more minutes of sleep. Fine, I'm coming." I dragged myself out of bed, pulled on jeans from the floor and a t-shirt that read, "I'm silently correcting your grammar." At that hour I couldn't even spell my own name. I peeked through the peephole and saw 3 figures standing stiffly on my porch. Matching yellow polos tucked into khakis, logos stitched over their hearts. A fancy tree with the words Bleakwood Estate Security curved above it. My house sat just outside the grand Bleakwood entrance, close enough to be annoying. I cracked the door, chain still on. "Can I help you guys?" The man in the center stepped forward. Stocky build, haircut that looked like it lost a fight with a lawn mower. A flimsy badge clipped to his belt read Officer Miller. "Officer of what, the fashion police?" "Sir," he said, puffing his chest, "we are official representatives of the Bleakwood Homeowners Association. We need to see your identification." I blinked. My brain was still negotiating with itself about coffee. "My ID? What?" The skinny guy on his left jumped in. "We've had reports of a non-compliant individual at this address." I leaned my head against the frame. "Non-compliant individual? You mean a person? And residing? You mean living? Congrats, you found one. What do I win?" Miller's face turned a deep red that clashed badly with the yellow shirt. "This is serious, sir. You are in violation. We need to confirm your identity now. If you refuse, we will detain you here until the sheriff arrives. Do you understand?" I looked at the 3 of them. The third guy was barely more than a kid, maybe 19, shifting nervously like his mom forced him to be there. "Look, fellas," I said, using the tone reserved for toddlers, "I admire the performance, but my house isn't in your HOA. It's on County Road 4. The line's back there by the oak tree." I pointed. Miller didn't even glance. "The Bleakwood bylaws state that all adjacent properties fall under community review. Show your ID or we will take further action." I laughed. A full, honest laugh. "Further action? What's that?" A strongly worded letter. "Monopoly money fines? Arrest me?" "Don't push us," he snapped. "We have authority to detain threats to the community's integrity." The humor drained out of me, replaced by heat. "Detain me on my own porch? You've got mall cop energy and nothing else. You're trespassing. You've got 10 seconds to leave before I call real police and report 3 guys impersonating officers." The skinny one stepped back. The kid looked ready to run. Miller stepped forward instead and put a hand on my door. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Bedard." That's when Nancy appeared behind me holding her phone on speaker. A calm voice said, 911, what's your emergency?" Nancy didn't blink. "Hello, yes. There are 3 men on my porch refusing to leave. They're threatening to detain my husband. Our address is 112 County Road 4. Miller went pale. He jerked his hand back like he'd touched a stove. "This isn't over," he hissed. Then they turned and marched off toward Bleakwood's perfect lawns. Nancy told the dispatcher they were leaving and no officer was needed for now, loud enough that Miller probably heard. I watched them go, heart pounding. Nancy squeezed my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah." "What was that?" She stared toward the subdivision. "That was Karen Black's opening move." She was right. I just didn't know it yet. So how did I end up with a yellow shirt crew threatening to detain me? Let's rewind 5 years, before the midnight grass measuring, before Karen became the villain in my low-budget superhero story. Nancy and I wanted out of the city. Quiet. Stars. A yard for a dog we hadn't adopted yet. We found a solid little 70s house on a half-acre, last place before the entrance to Bleakwood Estates. The agent, Brenda, wore too much perfume and talked too fast. She sold it hard. All the benefits of a high-end neighborhood, none of the hassle. Property values will soar. Then she leaned in. Best part, no HOA. This lot was grandfathered. Your own little island. That sold me. King of my own half-acre, population 2, future dog named Hank. Move-in day was chaos. Boxes everywhere. I was fighting a bookshelf when a golf cart zipped up the driveway. A woman jumped out with helmet blonde hair and a tennis skirt. Her visor sparkled with Bleakwood welcomes you. Karen Black. She chirped her introduction, voice too loud, smile too sharp. President of the HOA. Just welcoming you. Her eyes scanned the property, lingering on peeling trim, the leaning mailbox, the old oak tree. It's charming, she said. Charming did a lot of work there. A diamond in the rough. It'll really help the Bleakwood entrance once it's fixed up. I bristled. We like it as is. It's got character. Karen laughed, sharp and quick. Character is nice, but curb appeal maintains values. I'll drop off the bylaws later. Nancy politely reminded her we weren't in the HOA. Karen's smile stayed put, eyes went cold. Technically, dear, but we're all one community. We want what's best for Bleakwood. She patted my arm and left. The welcome basket arrived the next day. Cheap wine, stale crackers, and a thick rulebook. Paint colors. Grass height. Garbage can visibility. A tyrant's manual. I tossed it in a box labeled junk. Nancy said it best. She doesn't understand the word no. For a year, nothing. Then the mailbox notice. Then another. Finds climbing. Photos closer. Then the grass citation. I found the reason one night. A board member crouched in my yard with a ruler. That earned them a pink flamingo named Fernando. Karen escalated. A landscaping crew planted a giant yellow compliance sign in my yard. Public shaming. That's when Nancy said don't get mad, get smart. We started recording everything. That sign was her mistake. It turned private harassment into a public show. The war stopped being about a mailbox and became about my home. And a few weeks later, when my friend Dave parked his beat-up truck on the public road, the tow truck showed up. Yellow lights flashing, lining up to hook it. And that's where things really went off the rails. Dave's battered work truck was halfway up the curb when I saw what was happening. Standing there like she owned the street was Karen Black, snapping her fingers and waving her arms at the tow driver like a traffic cop on a power trip. She had a clipboard tucked against her chest and that familiar tight smile that meant she thought she was winning. Next to her stood one of her board friends, short, stiff, wearing a blazer and gripping her own clipboard like it gave her authority. A few houses down, Mr. Henderson was already on his sidewalk, laughing and filming, while I stood with my arms crossed, biting back a grin at how absurd the whole scene looked. Hey, stop. I shouted, jogging over. What exactly do you think you're doing? Karen turned, her smile snapping into place, plastic and hollow. Stanley, we're enforcing community parking rules. This vehicle has been here over 4 hours. It's an eyesore and a violation of Bleakwood bylaws. Dave stepped up beside me, his face flushing. This is a public road. You don't get to tow my truck off a public road. And it's my work truck. My tools are in there. Karen tapped her clipboard. According to our updated community map, this section falls under HOA jurisdiction for maintenance and aesthetics. The truck has to go. The tow driver, a big guy with a greasy ponytail, shifted his weight and looked uneasy. He glanced from Karen to Dave to me. Ma'am, is this actually a private road? It's under our oversight, Karen said, carefully sidestepping the question. That's when Mr. Henderson shuffled closer, still filming, a huge grin plastered across his face. He was in his 80s, retired, and treated neighborhood drama like live theater. Oh, this is better than daytime TV, he laughed. Karen shot him a look sharp enough to cut glass. He just waved back. The driver cleared his throat. I need paperwork. County order. Police authorization. I can't tow a vehicle off a public street because someone tells me to. Karen's confidence collapsed. Her smugness drained away. This is ridiculous. I'm the HOA president. My authority should be sufficient. Dave stepped forward. My authority says if you touch my truck, I'm calling the police and reporting attempted grand theft auto. How does that sound? The driver raised his hands. I don't want problems. My contract's for inside the gates. This is county road. I'm out. He climbed back into his cab, pulled the hook, shrugged once and drove off. Karen stood there seething, hugging her clipboard like a shield. She looked like royalty being ignored by peasants. She spun on me. This is your fault. You and your junk are ruining this community. Mr. Henderson burst out laughing. Tell him, Karen? Tell that mailbox who's boss. Her face went from fury to pure embarrassment. Being challenged was bad enough. Being mocked on camera by an old man was worse. Without another word, she stomped back toward her beige house like a defeated general. Dave clapped my shoulder. That was close. Thanks, man. Anytime, I said, watching Karen retreat. But this isn't over. Mr. Henderson wandered over, still chuckling. Got the whole thing on video, Stan. Want it? I looked at him differently then. Yeah, I said. I really do. That night, Nancy and I watched the footage. Shaky, heavy breathing but clear. Karen trying to tow a truck from a public road. Claiming authority she didn't have. Nancy saved it in a folder she named the Karen Chronicles. We both knew it was just the beginning. Karen didn't lose quietly. After that public embarrassment, she vanished for weeks. The silence felt wrong. Like weather before a storm. Then the newsletter came. It announced the Bleakwood Community Security Team. Lots of talk about vigilance and safety. Volunteers patrolling the neighborhood. There was a photo of Karen and 3 men in bright yellow polos, looking serious. One of them was Miller, porch haircut and all. They said they had badges and body cameras. For protection. I felt a chill reading it. This wasn't safety. It was intimidation. A few days later, I saw them cruising around in a used security cart with a flashing yellow light. They'd park right at the HOA boundary across from my house and just sit there watching. Hours at a time. Nancy was furious. I told her there was nothing we could do. They were staying on their side. Then Friday happened. I opened my front door and nearly ran into Miller. He was standing on my porch, arms crossed, blocking my way. Body camera blinking red. Recording. This is my property, I said. Move. This is a patrol zone, he replied flatly. I knew what he wanted. Me to shove him. Me to snap. I pulled out my phone and started recording. I calmly told him to leave or I'd call the police. His smirk faltered. Karen stepped out of her SUV. Is there a problem, Stanley? Yeah, I said. Your guy is trespassing. She smiled sweetly. If you cooperated, this wouldn't be necessary. That was the line. He backed off finally. I stood there shaking, knowing this had crossed into something worse. Monday she called the cops. Leet. Claimed I was threatening her. I recorded everything. When the officers arrived, I showed them proof. Surveys. Maps. The truth. My house wasn't in the HOA. Never had been. Karen's plan collapsed in real time. The officers warned her. Told her security team had no authority. They left. Nancy looked at me afterward and whispered, she could have gotten you arrested. That was it. That night, Nancy closed the laptop and looked at me, calm and steel-hard. We're done reacting, she said. We're ending this. Start with the money, Nancy said, her eyes sharp with purpose. Every HOA runs on a budget. They have to file paperwork. I want to know exactly where their money is going, especially whatever they're spending on this so-called security team. Uniforms, carts, cameras, none of that is cheap. The next morning, I submitted a formal records request to the Bleakwood HOA asking for their most recent annual budget, meeting minutes, and a full list of expenses. Nancy had combed through state law and confirmed they were required to release certain documents to any homeowner who asked, member or not, as long as they filed with the county. At first they ignored me. After a second, firmer email quoting the exact statutes Nancy found, I finally got a reluctant response from the HOA secretary with a few PDF files attached. We spent the entire night going through them. Most of it was dull. Lawn service fees, pool supplies, holiday decor. Then Nancy spotted something off, a massive, vaguely worded expense listed under community improvement projects for tens of thousands of dollars. Right below it was another entry for security consulting and equipment that was wildly inflated. There's no way they spent 50 grand on yellow shirts and a golf cart, I said. So where did it really go? Nancy kept digging, cross-referencing names from the meeting minutes with public business filings. That's when she found it. The security consulting firm was a brand new LLC, and the registered agent was Karen Black's brother-in-law. She's funneling HOA money straight into her own family, Nancy whispered, eyes wide. This isn't just a power trip. It's fraud. It was a huge discovery, but it still didn't explain why they were so obsessed with my house. That answer came from somewhere else entirely. Mr. Henderson, my goofy neighbor with the camera, called me. Stan, he said, unusually serious, my daughter works as a paralegal at the county planning office. She saw something you need to hear. He told me a major developer called Apex Homes had submitted a preliminary proposal to the county. They wanted to buy all of Bleakwood Estates, demolish the houses and replace them with an ultra-luxury gated community complete with a golf course. They couldn't just seize deeds. The plan depended on a massive buyout that required nearly every homeowner to agree. Karen wanted to be the one who delivered a clean, problem-free package, including me. The numbers alone made my head spin. But there was one problem. The grand entrance they designed needed more space. Specifically, it needed the half-acre my house sat on. The entire deal hinged on them acquiring my property. Suddenly it all made sense. The harassment, the fake violations, the rent-a-cop routine, the panic. This wasn't about control. It was about forcing me out. Karen wanted the credit, the power, and the payoff that came with handing the developer the final missing piece. She's not trying to make me follow rules, I said, the realization hitting hard. She's trying to make me sell. She's making life unbearable, so I'll quit and leave. With that clarity, Nancy made another call. This time to a lawyer. We met him the next day. His name was Mr. Davies, sharp and direct, no nonsense. We laid everything out. Letters, videos, Henderson's footage, the police report, the budget, the money trail, the developer proposal. He listened quietly, his expression darkening. When we finished, he leaned back. Mr. and Mrs. Bedard, he said, this is one of the clearest cases of HOA overreach and targeted harassment I've ever seen. This goes far beyond enforcement. You're looking at misuse of funds, conspiracy, and a coordinated effort to illegally devalue your property and force a sale. Then he leaned forward, a slight smile forming. They think you'll fold. They're wrong. For the first time in months, I felt real hope. We weren't just reacting anymore. We had a plan, a professional, and the truth. Karen Black started a war over a mailbox. We were about to finish it in court. Mr. Davies said the next move was to go public, not through the media but through the community. Karen's power came from fear and apathy. Break that and she falls. The timing was perfect. The annual HOA meeting was coming up, usually a boring debate about flowers and decorations. This year would be different. That night the clubhouse buzzed. People came for cookies and coffee, but something felt charged. Karen and her board sat at the front, smug and important. Miller and his skinny partner guarded the door, looking more like bored retail workers than security. Nancy and I sat in the back with friends. Mr. Henderson was there, grinning. So were Maria, fined over sidewalk chalk, and Robert, threatened over his faded door. Karen opened with a glowing presentation about community improvements and the new security team, skipping the part where real cops shut them down. She asked for questions. Silence hung for a second. Then Maria stood. Her voice shook but held. She asked about the $50,000 security line item and whether Karen could explain why the firm belonged to her brother-in-law. The room stirred. Karen froze. She called it private business approved by the board. Before she could move on, Robert stood and questioned why property lines were suddenly being redrawn after decades. The murmurs grew. Karen snapped about official plat maps. That's when I spoke. Loud enough for everyone. I asked which plat map she meant, the county's or the secret one she used to tow my friend's truck. The room went dead quiet. Karen turned red. She tried to shut me down. I fired back. Nancy stood beside me holding papers and told everyone about the Apex Homes deal and how it depended on pushing us out. The room exploded. Shouts, questions, anger. Karen pounded the gavel, powerless. Her board avoided eye contact. Miller edged for the exit. Years of silence broke all at once as people connected the dots. Henderson recorded everything. Karen finally screamed, the meeting adjourned, and fled. The spell was broken. People crowded around us, sharing stories, asking questions. For once I didn't feel alone. It wasn't the end. It was the uprising. The real fight came at the county hearing. Mr. Davies filed a formal complaint citing harassment, illegal actions, misuse of funds, and false police reports. The hearing room was packed. Karen sat across from us, trying to look calm. The residents filled the seats. Her lawyer painted us as troublemakers. Then Mr. Davies calmly dismantled it all with deeds, maps, videos, and receipts. The footage spoke louder than words. The commission watched Karen lie, bully, and misuse emergency services. When the financial evidence and developer proposal came out, it was over. The chairman laid down the penalties. Massive fines. Insurance dropped. Criminal investigations launched. Karen sat hollow and broken. Her empire collapsed under facts she couldn't bully away. As we left, residents applauded. A year later, life is quiet again. Better quiet. I grill in the backyard. Nancy reads on the porch. Fernando the Flamingo still stands guard. We got our dog Hank. The HOA changed. Karen's gone. The developer fled. Bleakwood stayed ordinary, and that's the victory. Sometimes you don't fight with anger. You fight with evidence, patience, and the truth. And sometimes, winning means keeping your little island exactly as it is.